Imagine writing a child off as young as 4, writing them off with a personality disorder with a future that's destined to be full of abuse. Imagine doing that. Sounds horrible, right, doesn't it? But these are the claims of Dr. Salerno. His absolutist assertion, his fatalistic assertion that we are genetically predisposed to either be narcissist or not. Well, let's look at how that's a problem. Most of the research Dr. Salerno references comes from broad big 5 personality traits: agreeableness, extroversion, introversion, empathy, or lack thereof, sensitivity, or lack thereof. To measure this, they used narcissism scales, otherwise known as NPI, the Narcissistic Personality Inventory, self-reported questionnaire designed to measure healthy narcissism to unhealthy narcissism. They also used research on the dark triad, traits such as narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. But here's the problem. These instruments measure subclinical traits, not narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, which is a clinical diagnosis based on distress, dysfunction, and impairment criteria. He conflates trait narcissism with pathological narcissism without citing any evidence that the traits lead to or reflect a diagnosable disorder. Genetic association does not equal genetic determinism. He references studies using SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, and neurotransmitter systems, dopamine, serotonin, etc., to suggest that narcissists are biologically hardwired to abuse, using selfishness, dominance, or lack of empathy. And here's why that's a misuse. SNP associations are probabilistic, not deterministic. They might slightly increase risk, but they don't guarantee behavioural outcomes. These studies are correlational and often conducted on general population samples, not clinically diagnosed individuals. The effect sizes are minuscule, often explaining less than 1% of behaviour. Most haven't been replicated or have mixed results across populations. Presenting these correlations as narcissists just can't help it. It's due to their biology. It's not only scientifically unsound, it's misleading to the point of being pseudo-scientific. Salerno cherry-picks studies that support his hypothesis, while the contradictory findings that show environmental and developmental factors like abuse, neglect, and insecure attachment strongly contribute to narcissistic traits. Studies that demonstrate that neuroplasticity and change over time contradict his claims that narcissistic traits are locked in genetically. Research that aggregates narcissism into adaptive versus maladaptive. So, for example, leadership versus exploitation, which undermines his binary view of narcissist versus empath. This is confirmation bias in action, using science not to explore complexity, but to defend a pre-decided narrative. He draws heavily from the dark triad, stroke light triad literature, and he uses it to pathologize victims, especially those who are high in empathy, openness, or agreeableness. His logic seems to fit round this. Victims have traits that attract narcissists, so they're equally part of the problem. This oversimplifies a trauma-based response into a fixed personality flaw. It fails to control for developmental trauma, boundary violations in childhood, fawning appeasement behaviours, rooted in disassociation or fear. None of these survival responses are traits, they're learned adaptations. By selectively matching dark triad traits, empathetic traits in victims, Salerno builds a pseudo-equation. Narcissistic traits plus overly empathetic traits equals relational dysfunction. This reduces abuse dynamics to interpersonal chemistry, stripping them of power imbalances, manipulation, gaslighting, entrenched trauma loops. It reframes abuse as an accident of nature, rather than the outcome of complex trauma and psychological exploitation. Dr. Salerno uses the aesthetics of science, genetics, neuroscience, psychological metrics, to make his claims appear rigorous. But when examined closely, his work lacks proper operational definitions. no clear boundary between trait and disorder, methodological transparency. It doesn't cite raw studies with statistical integrity, theoretical consistency, ignores trauma theory, attachment and regulation models. This includes Kernberg, Shore, and Bowlby, and 130 years of psychoanalytic research and the lived experience of millions of survivors. The result is a theory that sounds like science, but fails even the basic standards of academic scrutiny. If his work was a peer reviewed study, it would be rejected for overreach and lack of control for confounding variables.